It's a lot harder for them to qualify to get in, basically.
Well, no, it's harder for them to qualify for specific schools that they may want to go to, like Harvard or something, where they have like really competitive entrants.
Yeah.
They can still go to a really good university. Well, like, all universities are good.
Sure, these guys are just going to make the argument in the inverse, and they say, okay, well, the black people can go to those other universities, but Ivy Leagues should be referred to the people that score the absolute best, not the ones that get affirmative action in.
This debate about masculinity about 6 months ago, and they put up on one of the
Chris has been having some good guests and good showings recently.
segments. I was pro-traditional masculinity, and there was a gentleman on the other side, and they said, here is a montage of some unspeakable people that represent masculinity. And there was Joe Rogan and John Peterson and blah, 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 blah. But the first person was Milo Yiannopoulos. I said, look, if you have brought me to the Middle East to defend Milo Yiannopoulos, you have brought the wrong person. I'm like, you know, we need to shift that, get that to one side. Milo can go over there. Do you see his debate with Destiny that he did a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 months ago now? Milo looked like a old touring singer in a rock band, still doing the shows, but can't hit the high notes anymore. And the whimsy and that sort of playful jester joker kind of gamesmanship had been abandoned in place of bottom of the barrel backbiting and genuine emotional sniping. And then Destiny said, after he's been pushed and pushed and pushed for 90 minutes, he says to Destiny, back in the olden times, they would have left your kind on the side of a hill to die. And Destiny said, well, I think that the gays would have been left there first. Milo said, well, I don't think that you can tell whether a baby's going to like dick when it comes out or not. Destiny said, well, you'd know all about young boys liking, wouldn't you?
Wow.
Bro, you guys so mad at that. Why are you making me sound like an unhinged lunatic? Chris, what are you doing?
And it broke Milo. It broke his brain. So, what? Sorry, what was that? And no one had any sympathy, because for 90 minutes, he'd called Destiny's wife a public fleshlight. Okay. He'd said everything under the sun.
Why are we dealing with these people?
Because it is entertainment. It is mental masturbation. A story about people will always be more seductive to a...
You reacted to Uber clip chimp lefty Twitter garbage the other day about fat British anti-woke at Destiny, super out of context. Oh, yeah?
Broader group than a story about ideas.
Got it.
I think. Am I wrong?
I don't know. There's so much stuff, so much beauty in this world. I wonder, at what point does middle school...
Okay. Hassan comments on your debate.
Hassan? Not coming on Disney's debate performance. Uh-oh. Or the average household in San Francisco.
Bro, I'm surprised he didn't rip a new asshole into the black conservatives more. Like, that's legitimately shocking. It's...
I don't want to... I'll do this later, because I'm going to do this all tonight. By the way, I don't know if you guys know... Oh, never mind. I don't want to... Oh, God, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, I just got fucking Hassan virus. My fucking brain. I'm remembering every single time these fucking losers are like on their stream screaming like, oh, I hate debate bros. Oh, I hate debating. Oh, I hate debate bros. Oh, I hate debate bros. But you put a black person in front of you disagree with, and all of a sudden you want me to turn into a fucking... Like, come on, dude. Really? The name of the show is Middle Ground, you autistic retard. Like, what do you expect me to do? It's called Middle Ground. They literally tell you when you go on, like, hey, make sure you let everybody talk. I'll say it later. We're fine, because I'll watch this all later.
Destiny reacting to XQC reacting to Hassan reacting to Jubilee. Content centipede.
Plan for the stream. I think this stream, because I can only stream for like 2.5 hours, I think I'm probably just going to watch the Jubilee thing. Ack wants you on his pod. He talked about you on his latest pod. Wait, where does Ack live? Is he in LA?
Quick hello from France. Big fan.
Keeper kick moment of the year.
Schizo.
Okay.
I got over it.
Okay,
I'm
Clint.
cool now.
Clint, go ahead and tell me. What's your answer?
I'll tell you what. My answer is going to be an audio thing here. Look at this.
Wait, Clint, you know we can't hear whatever you're playing in the background.
You can't hear it?
No, we can't hear it.
Let me just, I guess, improv it for you. Ouch, stop hitting me. Ow, God, claw, get off me. Ouch, ouch. Yeah, probably cancel the fucking woman beater. It wasn't a YouTube boxing match. Jesus Christ, now you're a human trafficker, too. The bitch has got so bad a psychosis.
Clark went to prison right after this because he wouldn't beat his girl up in the middle of the show. I know, yeah. Hello.
What's up, Doug?
Yo, what? Did you just wake up?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, what's up?
So, saw the Jubilee video. I didn't watch the entire thing. I skipped over some shit that I thought was kind of boring, like the end. But I saw the affirmative action part. I thought that was the most interesting, probably. Maybe the reparations thing too.
Okay.
If you're down to talk about that. But I wanted to talk about some of the bad takes those black conservatives had on affirmative action. The strongest argument I think they really had was that affirmative action made them feel like they were getting into school without actually accomplishing anything, and they felt like ashamed of themselves compared to their peers because they actually had to work for it, but they didn't. Well, supposedly the inverse would be true, where if it's especially hard, then you have more to be proud of. Which is strange because they complained about Asians not being able to get into schools like Harvard without like extremely high SAT scores. So it just seemed like an argument that didn't really make any sense to me. They're claiming that affirmative action's bad because you have students feeling like they didn't accomplish anything, and they were talking about getting criticism from their peers like they only got in because they're black. Well, again, the inverse would be true. So Asians should be happy that it's harder to get into Harvard because
I think you're trying to apply like some statistical, logistical, rationalized like lens or whatever. But I don't think that's how it works. I think it's just most people will just look at it and go, "Oh, blacks have an easier time because of affirmative action. That makes me feel like a retard."
Yeah,
I think that's how most people view it.
I know. And I knew a guy who said he felt like that after going to university. But again, if they're going to use that as an argument in support of the idea against affirmative action, yet they rope Asians in here as an argument that, oh, this is why affirmative action's bad because it's so much harder for them. Like, again, the inverse would be true. So it shouldn't really be a problem.
The difference, like, yeah, real quick, just the difference is emotionally is because if you have a track, okay, like this is kind of what like minority struggle is. Okay, let me explain this to you as a white guy. Okay, if you have a track, okay, and in one track you've got a fuck ton of like bumps and rocks and hurdles or whatever, and then you've got another track, and at the very end you just have one really big wall you've got to climb, people are going to view the really big wall as always being harder, even if the entire road is smooth. That's why people look at affirmative action and they don't see all the little bumps that a particular minority might have to go through throughout their life. They just see the fact that at the end of the road, they don't have any big obstacles like a higher SAT or ACT score to jump over, and they think that it's simpler. But they'll look at the Asian person and they'll ignore the wealthy background, that culture that pushes them to study, all that. Yeah, but I'm not okay, don't say I know. I'm not arguing with you, okay? And I'm not trying to say you're right or wrong. I'm telling you that this is how people view it. It's very human. It will likely never change. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So, right. Well, I understand that perspective, but like what really, like, again, logically, if we're going to talk about, you know, affirmative action being bad because certain students feel like they haven't really accomplished anything and other people are judging them because, oh, you only got into the school because you're black. Like, again, that would make it a bad argument against affirmative action in the case of when they use Asians as an example, because again, they have like as the black people said, they have a bigger hurdle to cross. So
yeah, but they would say it's probably not fair to the ones that they would say that it's probably not fair to the ones that outscored the black people and didn't get in.
Yeah, and again, if you're going to talk about like this case against affirmative action based on merit,
I'm beating gains. I'm going to say the same 10 phrases over and over. Not the game.
If it is harder and it's unfair, then when Asians do get in, they have more to be proud of.
Yeah, but they would probably agree with you there. They'd probably say, yeah, I would take an Asian doctor more seriously than a black doctor because I know that Asian doctor had to work harder to get through school. They'd probably just agree with you.
Well, yeah, you could make that argument, but that brings me to my next point. They really dishonestly painted this picture that if you're Asian and you need a higher SAT score to get into the same school, that you just can't go to university. I saw that idea being spread across the board.
Well, you can go to university. It's a lot harder for them to qualify to get in, basically.
Well, no, it's harder for them to qualify for specific schools that they may want to go to, like Harvard or something, where they have really competitive entrants.
Yeah.
They can still go to a really good university. Well, all universities are good.
Sure, these guys are just going to make the argument in the inverse, and they say, okay, well, the black people can go to those other universities, but Ivy Leagues should be referred to the people that score the absolute best, not the ones that get affirmative actioned in.
Yeah, the argument against that is just... for one thing, I really don't fucking care. I think they need to get rid of this fucking idea of,
You can't ground your argument on
prestige.
it. I really don't care, right?
Well, I'm saying they really should get rid of this idea of prestige. This school's, so much better than other schools. You're going to get the same quality of education at somewhere like Harvard or MIT versus, I don't know, some local university that doesn't have as much prestige. They have
it depends on the
educational
majors.
standards.
It super depends on the majors that we're talking about, and sometimes your alma mater can actually matter in terms of the connections you make with the school. For instance, law school, going to a top 5, top 10 law school is pretty important in terms of placement and first job and everything, and even through your career, I think people look at that pretty highly. I think it really depends on the major you're going into.
There's that's the problem. There's no actual unique aspect of the education that would make you a better lawyer. It's just that, oh, you went to Harvard.
Sure, and that's possible. But I mean, if you want to talk about changing the entire cultural attitude towards education or Ivy League institutions, but that's another argument, right?
Yeah, but I understand that, on your resume, Harvard sounds more impressive, but, again, the end outcome that we're interested in is just making it a bit more fair for black people versus other more advantaged races. And given, the low amount of entrance historically to places like Harvard, I don't see what the fucking problem is with affirmative action. In both cases, Asians can still get a very high quality education. They clearly do have an easier time versus black people getting into places like Harvard, which is why they have these different standards. And when it comes to things like this,
I don't know what you're
feeling...
nothing you're arguing has anything to do with anything of anything. I don't understand. It's not supposed to be about can they get into school? It's usually conservatives are making merit-based arguments on the best applicant should be the one that makes it. This idea that you can get an education somewhere else doesn't have any bearing on any of their arguments.
So when we're talking about the best applicants again, there's a reason why they don't just go on SAT scores. So when they're looking at different applicants, they don't just look at race. They also look at things like family background, whether you have 2 parents in the household. They look at your family income. They look at what neighborhood you grew up in, stuff like that. So it's not just, oh, you're black, so it's easy to get in. That is an aspect to it, race. But again, the reason why they have these standards...
I don't know why you're explaining this to me. I understand. I know the reason behind affirmative action. I understand. I don't know who you're arguing. I'm just saying that this is why conservatives don't like it.
Yeah. Again, this is... You can agree that if you have these other road bumps in front of you when it comes to getting, an SAT score... a black person, let's say, on the aggregate getting... I don't know how they... do SAT scores. Let's say black person on the aggregate getting 800 versus other races getting 1,000, something like that. Considering other confounding variables, I don't know, maybe both parents aren't in the household, you go to a worse school, there's other stressors in your life, it basically ends up equating. So
I'm not your... we're retreading We're retreading...
Well, yeah. You were against the idea of affirmative action, though, and the only arguments I really heard were this idea of a lack of... It's not even a lack of merit. It's this idea that I feel ashamed that the only reason I got into school might have been because I was black. and Asians have trouble.
I think that the
school.
arguments against affirmative action are, one, there's like mixed evidence for this idea of mismatch theory, and two, the optics and everything behind it are so bad that it's probably just worth ditching and doing like a more socioeconomic targeted thing instead.
Okay, well, okay, if those are your two arguments, there's clearly adequate enough evidence for universities to support it. Like, again, there's a reason why they don't want to rely on just SAT scores.
Nobody is
They're
telling them to rely on why
extremely
that's so it's philosophy terms, false dichotomy, right? Nobody is saying it's either just SAT scores or completely racialized affirmative action. There's a ton of things that college things can consider as part of their admissions. People just don't want race to be one of them. I'm not saying that means they can only go by SAT or ACT scores.
Well, again, there's a reason why they want to include race as an aspect in college admission, and it's because it is a relevant factor.
I understand that. I'm just, that's not my, okay.
Right, and then you're just saying it creates a kind of image that, like a muddy sort of image that seems kind of gross that you're allowing people in because of race. Like, again, I don't know why that really fucking matters. Like, at the end of the day,
you don't know why
there's
perception matters about public policy that we vote on?
It really, no, it doesn't.
Just to be clear,
look,
it's literally the
day,
only thing that matters. Because if public perception is bad,
the only thing that matters.
Listen, if public perception is bad on a policy, they're going to vote it away and then it'll be gone forever. Of course it matters. What do you mean?
No, it doesn't. Because at the end of the day, what matters is people getting into university in a fair manner.
That doesn't matter if people don't like the way it's happening and they vote to get rid of it.
Okay, well, nobody's voting to get rid of it.
Really? Didn't we just have a huge Supreme Court case that literally acts affirmative? Okay, wasn't part of the whole election of Trump to get Supreme Court justices to rule on things exactly relating to things like affirmative action and Roe v. Wade?
Okay, nobody fucking cares about affirmative action. The only people who care about affirmative action are Asians and racists. Like, that's really it. It's just not a fucking big political issue. So again, at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters to me is whether or not we have a system where people in a relatively fair manner can get into university. And when you're talking about disadvantaged communities, like, they're being benefited from things like this. People who otherwise wouldn't get into university are getting into university.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, the reparations thing. So, yeah, I think you, like, again, I'm paraphrasing, but I think you said something along the lines of black people should have no money and they should be slaves or something. I'm just kidding, but, yeah, the idea that it's, like, too fucked up and complicated and muddy to actually give reparations, I don't agree with that. You could just easily have a thing where you just require somebody to track down their genealogy to where they can prove they do have family that are slaves. You could just create some standard of evidence. We already have that for things like Native American benefits. Here in Canada, if you're Native American, you don't have to pay sales tax. And they have a similar system where you just have to show your family tree, and provide adequate evidence that you're from, like, a particular tribe, and then you don't have to pay sales tax. You can have a similar thing where you get like $40,000 back from the government.
So I'm gonna jump into the racist bucket. Not to be racist, but what do you do with all like the single white moms who don't even know who the black father is? Are those kids just completely shit out of luck, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you don't have to have a perfect system where every single black person who has, like possibly has slave ancestors still gets money, even though they have like no proof. I don't know why it can't just be a system where, you know what, if you can provide adequate proof, then here you go. If you can't, then I'm sorry if you do in fact have slave ancestry, but, you know, the risk of something like fraud and the expense to, you know, the U.S. government and taxpayers is just too great. I think the idea right now behind reparations is just to make a good faith effort for the United States government to say, you know what? Here we're sorry. You know, in the past there was 300 years of slavery, and beyond that point, there has been a lot of fucked up shit with treatment of black people. This is our way of kind of saying sorry and making a good faith effort coming forward to have a good relationship and treat black people fairly. And I don't think it would bankrupt the U.S. economy or anything if you had a system like that, where you just had to track down your genealogy, prove you had slavery. The expense would probably be fairly minor, like probably less than adding $300 billion to the U.S. military budget in a single year.
Okay. Anything else?
What do you think of that?
I think it's a dog shit idea. I think reparations are dog shit. I don't think anybody in the U.S. deserves money because their great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a fucking slave. But that's just me.
Yeah. You think if there was like 300 years of slavery and that amount of time of unpaid labor in your family history, like, you shouldn't get something back?
Nope.
Okay, well, that sounds a little crazy to me. I don't think that sounds fair, that you can have a group of people who've
I understand what you're saying.
benefited.
I think that from a geopolitical and from a historical lens, you get into very impossible to navigate areas when we start going hundreds of years back into the past to find out who ought to be recompensed for some immoral or unfair action. It just, like, the entire world basically falls apart instantly when you try to run the math on things like that. So I know you're going to say you don't believe that's the case, but, like, go talk to Native Americans that want land back in the United States. Okay.
Well, I'm not going to say that. Like, in the Native American example, like, I just gave you the example of not having to pay sales tax.
Yeah,
like,
Native Americans don't give a fuck about
life.
not having to pay sales tax. They probably want their land back. Like,
well, yeah, sure, but I mean, if we're talking about comparing it to reparations, like not having to pay sales tax for the entirety of your life, that would probably save you more money than $40,000. So if that sort of, if those sorts of savings can be made with something like that, like a good faith effort by the government to give some sort of compensation, even though these things happened fairly long ago, I don't know why we can't do the same thing with reparations.
okay. I'll think about it, okay?
Okay.
All right.
All right, well, have fun doing what you're doing.
Yeah, be careful.
Take care.